It's me great pleasure to welcome you here on this historic day where we've been able to put together a collection of the most impressive authors and researchers and open minds that you could possibly think of, and probably the largest collection of these kind of minds at one stage. So it's wonderful to have you here to come and share this day with us. And I believe that it is truly an important day for Johannesburg and South Africa, and as a result of that for the rest of the world, because I believe today we're planting some very serious seeds of consciousness and the growth of consciousness, and therefore Johannesburg will be that much stronger for that. Thank you for coming. I always forget to do this, so before I go, I'm going to thank a few people. Roland and Henri for helping us to organize the speakers and the guests, for carting them around and making their beautiful home available for the private functions and dinners and everything. Thank you so much to Elle, Adele, Mervyn, Amanda, Di, Mike van Niekerk and Willem and Bill, and then our two American guests, Greg and Austin, who actually organized the GPR company to do the GPR scanning of several sites all the way from America, and then came here to be for the GPR scanning and also helping us at this event. Austin and Greg, thanks very much for being here with us. And then my wonderful girlfriend Daryl, who I always forget to thank. You know, the closest ones to you you hate the most, or you abuse the most. And I'm really guilty of that all the time. It's terrible. So, baby, thank you very much for helping out when you really weren't part of this and just jumped into the deep end and helped to rescue some really tense situations. And I think we're going to have an awesome time today. And then finally, the person who is responsible for putting such a gathering together and who started the Megalithomania brand, Hugh Newman, all the way from England. Thank you very much. Over to you, Hugh.
Thank you, Michael. Very nice introduction. And thank you all for being here, Megalithomaniacs. To you in the auditorium, to you at home watching it on the live stream, and to all you in the future who are watching it on DVDs. It's a pleasure for me to be in South Africa, not only to see some of the incredible sites that Michael Tellinger and Johan Heine have been researching, also to grace the stage with a stunning lineup of fellow megalithomaniacs that are at the forefront of unlocking the secrets of the ancients. And megalithomania is like a phenomenon sweeping the planet, as people like you and I feel a powerful connection to these ancient sites, as though they have a magnetic attraction and are communicating a message through time. Megalithomania as a conference has been running now for 6 years in the mystical town of Glastonbury in Britain. It was set up by me, Hugh Newman, John Martineau and Gareth Mills to create a platform to challenge the conventional view of archaeology, also to challenge megalithic science and the out-of-date studies that are still being taught at universities. The name comes from the 1982 book by John Michel, visionary, antiquarian and inspiration for the conference, who we dedicate this event to. He too understood that the voice of the ancient site should not only be from the academic world and archaeologists, but from antiquarians like you and I, who are often the ones who make the breakthroughs in these areas, just like John did himself. And we need to open up the viewpoint, not just from the archaeologist's point of view. As we went through the years of megalithomania, we quickly realized that the megaliths are a global phenomenon and exist in almost every country on Earth. From pyramids in Bosnia to stone circles in Morocco, from underground tunnels in Peru and trilothons on Tonga, the world once had a great maritime civilization that shared its megalithic secrets worldwide. In 2010 and 2009, Michael came over to the UK to speak at the Stars and Stones Forum and also at Megalithomania. And he delivered some lectures about South Africa that caused an immediate sensation. And we proposed that we should bring megalithomania to South Africa. And here we are. Now, I'd like to introduce Michael Tellinger as the first speaker of Megalithomania Johannesburg 2011. Michael's discoveries, as you know, will no doubt eventually rewrite the history books of this part of the world, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce him. After 30-year-long obsession with the origins of humankind and the genetic anomalies of our species, he wrote Slave Species of God, which became an instant bestseller in South Africa. When Johan Heine exposed the mystery of the stone ruins to South Africa in 2007 to Michael, they began an irreversible process of research that led Michael to some startling scientific conclusions and the completion of 2 more books, Adam's Calendar and Temples of the African Gods. His latest book presents a fascinating theory about the possible origins of modern man. It also implies a completely different view of our place on this planet and indeed the universe. By combining scientific readings with simple deductive reasoning with a megalithomaniac's mind, he comes up with a new vision of the history of the past of ancient Africa. Last week, he carried out extensive archaeological research with a team from San Diego, and this weekend will be the first presentation of his findings. Please give a huge Megalithomania welcome to the one and only Michael Tellinger.
Thank you very much. Let's get this show on the road. I'm going to start completely differently today with a statement that I normally throw about the dinner table, and that is, don't believe a word I say. I want you to take this in, absorb it, think about it, and go away and reach your own conclusions. I'm going to present you with a bunch of facts and some interesting discoveries and some theories and conclusions, but these are my theories and conclusions based on some scientific evaluations. That doesn't mean that everybody will agree, but after statistical evaluation and probabilities thrown about, I tend to sway towards my conclusions rather than any other conclusions. So until somebody else presents me with something more overwhelming, I'll stick to this, and I hope that you'll take something away from this that'll make you think at least. So to start off with, the history of our planet is not as it seems. This is a very important and crucial little bit of information that we need to sink into our subconscious. Because when we come out of school, and for those that are privileged enough to go to university, it's often associated with ego. And you think that I'm a well-educated guy, no one's going to lie to me or pull the wool over my eyes. Well, surprise, surprise. The higher your education, the more liable or the more probable you are for having the wool pulled over your eyes. And I am one of those perfect examples. It's taken me a lifetime to figure this out, and hopefully we can shortcut this process for a lot of people. Things are not as they seem. There's been a lot of stuff happening on this planet that makes no sense. And when you start delving and researching origins of humankind and asking those questions, who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here? I bet you that every one of you has asked those questions before. And not just you here, but millions of people around the world. Not just once, but many times. And here we are, still not sure. Who are we, where do we come from, and why are we here? What I call the great human puzzle. But I think the incredible revelations that the southern African continent is delivering to us now at this very special time in human history, approaching 2012 and other interesting time periods, it is very important to take these things into consideration. These things do not happen by coincidence. And the more I research, the more I realize that this is probably so. So when you start going back and researching human history and looking at the anomalies that don't make any sense, you realize very quickly that you can't just stick to history or archaeology or whatever it is, or geology. You've got to actually open your mind and learn and research everything that crosses your desk. Because if you don't, you will miss pieces of the puzzle. And a lot of the very important pieces of the puzzle come from indigenous knowledge, ancient indigenous knowledge that in the Western society especially is ignored and buried and forgotten. And that is a great shame. And it is from that ancient indigenous knowledge that a lot of wisdom comes. And you'll see how this ties beautifully into some very advanced modern scientific discoveries. The other fascinating thing is that you realize that all these